But with an aggro deck, it's actually respectable, I think. I think that's where you want it, at least, if it's going to go anywhere, because at least you have that end game reach like we talked about. Cards like Cacklers that come into play and deal damage to you, pretty good, pretty good.
So you see Andrew Tanjum on the right here. He'll be on the play. He opens up with an untapped Stomping Grounds. And our new Land of War Elf reprint, Elvish Mystic.
Okay, we have a mirror land here. Let's see. I'm more excited to see what comes out of this deck. It can be anything. We got a Pillar of Flame. His removal package is Bonfire 3 times, 3 times Searing Spear, 3 times Pillar in James Kincaid's deck. So he has a plethora of red removal.
We have a Burning Tree Emissary and no follow-up.
I hope James actually has the Blind Obedience here. It's kind of funny because this is actually the deck you wanted most against.
Yeah, a lot of haste elements, Hellrider especially.
Right.
A Lotla from James, sort of signaling that maybe he's more of an aggro Jund-list. Lotla hasn't seen a ton of play in recent decks, but
I think he has to take this, obviously. You know, and no one's willing to drop a couple cards just to get a Searing Spirit anyway. Interested to see James Kincade, see if he has this powerhouse Verils on turn 3. Obviously cannot cast his Boros Reckoner. That would be the old pipe dream. Lala Troll to that. It'd be very tough to do. AKA impossible. Alright, so Scavenging Ooze, the new hotness, or what you call it, the old hotness? That's new?
The new hotness.
The new hotness from old? There we go, let's give it that. From an EDH standpoint into the real world.
So a tapped Overgrown Tomb, and James happy to just sit back with his Lalatrol on defense.
Right. Regeneration on that guy is pretty good. Lalatrol is another card that was kind of swept under the rug. Very powerful card. 2 power for 2, regenerating, gets bigger. Discard outlet for Reanimator if you want to do. Has a lot of different game aspects.
And this was one of the, again, one of the superstar cards of the Block Pro Tour in San Diego not too long ago. This was a defining card of many junk-style mid-range decks. There's a lot of angles, a lot of play to this card, and especially potent in combination with Verils.
Right.
So we see a Gyro Sage here from Andrew trying to set up a big Hellrider turn.
Oh, Searing Spear is a fantastic draw for James. Gives him an answer to said Hellrider draw. Also gives him pretty much any removal stuff for anything in his deck. He can actually kill the Scavenging Ooze now before it gets out of control. He's got a lot of different ways he can use that Searing Spear.
And this is a fine way for James to pace the game, not only because his cards are more individually powerful and synergistic than the ones in Andrew's deck, but he also has Bonfire of the Damned in his deck. So the longer that he lets the board sort of develop and build up, the more that Bonfire can be devastating.
Bonfire, definitely this is the matchup where you want to do it. This is the matchup where it shines. Looks like Andrew has a couple land in his hand. And then a red card where the Hellrider. So that Searing Spear, definitely such a good draw there, because otherwise we would see an avalanche of damage come his way. Oh, he's going to a text.
So James is going to let the attack occur.
Interesting.
I wonder if he's planning on...
He might be using Lalatrol to kill Hellrider with just... Maybe the Searing Spear is just for Scavenging Ooze?
Yeah, that might be... He's willing to take a lot of damage here if that's the case.
I still think I would do it pre-combat, right?
So we're going to see shields up here. And he's passing before damage. So I think this is going to probably prompt a Scavenging Ooze, which I assume will induce the spear.
I hope he... I mean, I don't see him not using it. It looks like he's taking it all.
Just taking his lumps here.
What was the Searing Spear? Were we wrong? Does he not have that in hand?
I was almost positive that was the card that I saw.
Yeah, that's it. It's there.
He's got big plans here.
I guess so. We'll see.
I mean, again, he can sort of continue to solidify his board.
Searing Spears, right?
He can there's a Bonfire.
Bonfire, gotcha.
He can continue to solidify his board with Regenerators, but it seems very dangerous to take that amount of damage.
Yeah.
Against a deck that presumably has a mixture of Searing Spear, maybe Thundermaw, Hellkites, additional Hellriders.
Right.
I think it was perhaps a little too conservative for him to be willing to take all of that damage there.
And now he passes, so he's obviously going to use it here to not die. I think James just might have made a little error there. Now he's in a situation where it's Andrew's in a great spot because James would go to 3 life.
And this is actually kind of an interesting counter synergy here as we see Searing Spear now get shot at the gyro stage. Is Volatile against Scavenging Ooze sort of, they feed one another here.
Right.
So
he's actually gonna his Scavenging Ooze is still not gonna die because he has oh no, he is gonna die. Hellrider is in his RFG pile, I think, isn't it? Is that his graveyard? I can't tell.
Every creature that James kills here or discards to Volatile is another pump that he has access to with the Scavenging Ooze.
Right, I couldn't tell if his Hellrider was already eaten. It looked kind of like in the same pile as his graveyard, but it looks like James's plan was to kill Scavenging Ooze with a block there, but it's not going to work. So now, because James didn't Searing Spear that Ooze a long time ago, I don't see how he's going to kill that creature.
I mean, he's still got a stable board, assuming that Andrew misses on a bunch of his draws here, because he can kill that Orange Emissary with his Searing Spear.
Right.
The Volatile holds off the Scavenging Ooze, and so they're kind of at parity.
Yeah. Good thing about Andrew's deck, he has 4 Domri Raid, and drawing that will fight Volatile and pretty much end the game.
Oh, I mean, he's got Thundermaw, Hellkite, Gorkland, Rampager.
Yeah, there's so many
Lysium
cards.
Mortars. He has no shortage of.
He drew a red card. I can't see. Is that a Hellrider? It's upside down. Yes, it's not a Hellrider. It might be a Searing Spear. He doesn't have Searing Spear in his deck, so it might be a Lysium Mortars.
So you see a Searing Spear here on the Burning Emissary. He's going to regenerate the Volatile.
I wonder what he drew. I can't tell. It looked like a red card. Those Mortars, Andrew could have killed him. It was Mortars. He could have Mortars his Volatile and then killed him.
Well, the risk there is that if he has 2 creatures left in hand, then it's pretty rough for him to.
I think you go for it though. I think he might even have the 6th land in his hand ready to do it. He could have overloaded. Well, Andrew had, that was the opportunity. That was the game, the ball game if he went for it. He did have the 6th land, so he could have overloaded. We'll see.
Well, he tested the waters last turn. I think that now seeing that James was sitting on a removal spell like that, he's willing to try again.
Yeah, and I feel like this board state should have been a little different. I think the Searing Spear should have been used on a lot earlier, like we pointed out.
You can see the look on Andrew's face here. He's like, all right, well, do you have it? Okay.
This is Andrew takes the game. It's an interesting series of events there.
Yeah, well, I like Andrew not going for it last turn because imagine James has Putrefy in his hand or something.
I apologize. He didn't actually need to overload there. I thought it would only be a normal cast, so he had mana open to deal with it. So if he had Putrefy, then the only worst case scenario would be you're losing, your Scavenging Ooze was going to lose anyway, and the Mortars. I think that if he has Putrefy there, the game is probably going to be out of reach for Andrew himself until he draws one of those other outs.
Well, I like the way that Andrew played those last 2 turns insofar as he tested the water the first turn to see if if James had any sort of like very powerful trick. Sensing that wasn't really the case, that he was probably sitting on cards that couldn't handle Scavenging Ooze. Then he went for the Mortars the following turn. Right. I like doing that than just firing off the Mortars the first time around. Right. In any event, moving on to the sideboard here, Andrew has access to a couple very powerful cards in his sideboard. He has 3 Bonfire of the Dams, quite good in any sort of creature matchup. 2 copies of Pillar of Flame. James's deck very clearly graveyard oriented. He's showed Varol, so Pillar's a nice card to have there. And 4 copies of Burning Earth, another new card from M14. It's primarily been sided against decks like Jund and Blue-White Red, devastating against decks that are primarily or fully non-basic land. Right. And James's deck, of course, showed nothing but non-basics in that game.
Do you think you bring it in this matchup? I don't know. Well, I think because as James showed with his deck, he can have that old Burning Tree Emissary, the Rakdos Cackler, Dryad Militant, all these early drops, Volatile start, and it seems like it'd be a dangerous card, but I agree with you. I've seen it against Jund decks where they have Huntmaster Thragtusk and still lose because it takes so much damage, so I can see that coming in, I guess.
The thing is, from sitting in Andrew's seat, he saw nothing in James's deck that indicates any sort of aggressive element. He basically saw Volatile, Varols, and removal. Yeah. It does imply maybe there's some other cheap creatures in the deck, but James's deck in that game showed off very much more of a mid-range value deck than a super beatdown deck. If he knew that there were 4 Cacklers and 4 Dryad Militants and Falkenrath Aristocrats, that could be a different question. Maybe you don't want Burning Earth against that setup. But James's deck seemed both mid-rangey and mana intensive enough with cards like Barrels and everything else.
It seems like if he has Barrels, he probably has early drops. Otherwise, it'd be pretty unsynergistic. But yeah, from just what he saw, you're right. It could be some mid-range deck with just wanting a 3/3 regenerator for 3.
I would really struggle to keep Burning Earth in my sideboard if I was Andrew, given the cards that I've seen in James' deck the first game.
On James' side, he has this whole board can come in. He has Olivia Volderin, fantastic against the aggressive decks. He has Dreadbore, it's a removal spell. It's a little bit slow and clunky, but still kills things. 3 more Scavenging Oozes, or 3 Scavenging Oozes total, which makes it, fight fire with fire. They have Scavenging Ooze, you have it too. It's obviously just a very good card against aggressive decks. He has a Pillar of Flame, a Putrefy, and 2 Domri. So a lot of these cards, I could argue almost all of them coming in at some point, in some fashion. Maybe 1 here, 2 there. But definitely the Olivias are going to come in. Definitely the Scavenging Oozes are going to come in. And you're definitely going to see the removal spells coming in. What do you think about Domri against the Blitz deck?
I think that he probably wants to bring in more spells. And I think that Domri's already pretty borderline to begin with, so I would probably not bring in these games.
Okay.
I'm a little surprised that James isn't playing Scavenging Ooze main because it's a bit of a nombo with Barrels, obviously. Yeah. But Scavenging Ooze plus Lala Troll, there's a really nice synergy there. We kind of got to see it in play because Andrew had a Scavenging Ooze on his side of the table, but those 2 cards in concert, pretty nice team.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably be the less or the least mana intensive card in his deck too. Pretty safe. Green only required here.
So James with the first turn, Rootbound Crag. And James is going to answer that with a Pillar.
And like you said, yeah, Pillar here is pretty good against, in both ways, I think. Good against each other. Andrew looks like he has a little bit of a slower start. Obviously doesn't have the early 1-drops because it was slain a second ago.
Stomping Ground untapped for Andrew.
Let's see what 2 drops we got here. We got the Boar. Not going to be sad to see that guy leave, to be honest.
Flint Hoof Boar with the land to pair.
Oh man, are we having a turn 3 Reckoner in our 4-color deck? I don't think he has a 3rd land.
Doesn't appear so, I think.
Or it looks like he has Drive Militant between that and Blind Obedience. Did he mulligan? Because he kept the 2 M13 land.
Well, he did have Pillar plus some spells that he could cast, but yes, he did keep 7.
Okay. I am definitely not the guy for mulliganing with these aggressive decks, but I definitely get sad seeing just Guild Gates in my hand.
A hand with multiple, reasonably castable Boros Reckoners, I would have a difficult time mulliganing against red green.
Right, especially when you need pretty much any land in your deck. But in his case, he does have Evergrown Tomb, which is not going to get it done. So,
is it Pillar to answer the Scavenging Ooze? And it looks like he just drew an isolated Chapel,
yep,
so he can't cast Reckoner this turn, but next turn he will be able to.
Right.
And then Dryad Militant.
It actually works out pretty well for him. He gets to play 2 spells in 1 turn, even though his lands aren't really cooperating.
And if I was in Andrew's position, I would really be struggling to, based on what I saw in the first game, now he's some sort of Naya deck after playing a bunch of
Overgrown Tombs. Yeah. It's going to be pretty interesting to see how Andrew reacts to some Reckoners coming in. And that's another Scavenging Ooze. That's the fancy foil alternative art one. And he did bring in Domri. So he brought in his Domri from the sideboard. I don't know if Andrew kept all of his in, but James feels like his creatures are pretty good in the combat arena with Andrew's creatures.
Well, certainly paired with Boros Reckoner.
Oh, that is just like we talked about in pre-coverage. You haven't lived until you've done that, I've heard, so go ahead and ask these guys how it feels to do that.
So we have a Boros Reckoner now on James' side of the board. Andrew with Thundermaw Hellkite in hand, but he can't play an attack this turn because of Blind Obedience.
Yep, and it's kind of interesting to see the dynamic here with all those haste creatures in the aggro deck that you're playing against, and you're playing a card just for a little bit of value, but you're getting double the value here. All right, so we're gonna have, I think we have a fight situation here. That Thundermaw Hellkite's pretty bad news when you're at 9 life. Then again, you do lose your Reckoner here if you do that.
Well, I think, no, that we just momentarily had that incorrect. We were assuming the Thundermaw was attacking, but it was actually under playing tap because of the Blind Obedience. So James still had a reasonably healthy 14.
Never mind, then. I don't think it's no time to panic yet.
I mean,
we can 2-for-1 him here with the fight, right? We just 2-for-2 us, I guess.
Yeah, we can either just get rid of the Thundermaw Hellkite altogether and redirect to some other creature, or we can try to play a slower game where we just shoot Scavenging Ooze and redirect to
Boris, right? Or to
Andrew.
Yeah. Or we could fight Boar and redirect to Scavenging Ooze, because we do have a second Boris Reckoner in hand to replace the first one.
Yeah, so a lot of options with this Domery potentially.
I think we kill both of his creatures on the ground here. Let me see the rest of his hand. If we have a reasonable answer to the Thundermaw Hellkite eventually. But the thing is, Thundermaw will probably kill Domery, which removes the chance of fighting in the future game. So, do you see any answers for a Thundermaw Hellkite in the future?
I think it's very likely that James just has to take down this Thundermaw.
Exactly, because I don't see him. Obviously, you want to just kill both creatures on the ground, because that's just reaction here, but you got to kill that. I thought he drew a Temple Guard. I must have missed some. He did. He said go and didn't play his land.
I think he may have missed the fight trigger with the Reckoner there.
Well, no, he fought with the Reckoner and then redirected the
right.
He did forget to play Temple Garden, though. I think he realized, he said go, and I saw his hand stop. He's like,
So, Andrew's sending both creatures here at the Domery to be safe to get it off the table.
And let's see how bad this 2 damage might affect this game here. When he plays a tap, he's going to play Reckoner here.
So this Reckoner, again, a pretty powerful follow-up here from James. He's able to keep the board relatively stable here. Reckoner's so good at fighting creatures that are on the ground.
Right, and until that Ooze becomes a 7/7, it looks like Reckoner can still stop it in its tracks. And that shows you how powerful the card is. Where a creature needs to be a 7/7 to survive, tangoing with a 3/3 Reckoner here.
Yep. Andrew, I believe, is down to a land and a Mizzium Mortars in hand.
How are we going to use the Mortars here? If he Mortars, he can't do it now because he can't afford to lose his Ooze, do you think? Or does he lose his Ooze here and has a Boar against nothing?
I think it's really risky to leave yourself with Boar against nothing.
Right, I think he definitely, once he gets one more available creature in the bin for Ooze, I think that Mortar is going to be pretty impressive here.
I'd be quite surprised to see that trade happen.
You definitely don't do that.
I think you can just attack with your Flinthook Boar potentially, because if he wants to just trade Reckoner for Flinthook Boar and deal 3 to you, you're fine with that exchange.
Right. Does he have first strike available, or
he has no mana untapped?
Oh, he's attacking with both though.
Okay, and just gonna send both.
So this is actually a similar outcome to actually casting the Mizzium Board. He's going to block Scavenging Ooze here, 3 to the Scavenging Ooze, and it would be Boar against Dry Militant, it looks like. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, I think if I was in James' position, I think you really need to get an opportunity to get Scavenging Ooze off the table while you can. The rest of your deck can brawl pretty efficiently with creatures like Flinthoof Boar, but
he's definitely
Scavenging Ooze just gets
here.
worse as the game progresses for you.
If James would have paid 2 life, he could have actually had first strike mana open, which is, I'm sure he's kicking himself for now.
I don't know if that's necessarily the case, because if James just says go, or if Andrew rather just says go there, then it's quite bad for you to have paid the 2 life.
Well, you would have, he wouldn't have been able to do any attacks at that point.
You see a land. White Obedience still ready there in play, pinning down Andrew's haste creatures. Scavenging Ooze and a Extort trigger off the Blind Obediences, and he's going to take his opportunity now to eat the 2 creatures out of the graveyard, get his Ooze up to a 4/4. This plays right into the jaws of Andrew's Mizzium Mortars, but James with a Gore Clan Rampager left over in the hand, so we're really, we're battling pound for pound here. There's a lot of haymakers.
Well, Andrew knows, we know he had the Mizzium Mortars. James obviously did not, and that's going to be a devastating blow here. Mortars is such a powerful card in the aggro mirror match, because you're going pound for pound with them, and this is a card that essentially says Wrath your board.
Good on turn 2 and good on turn 12.
Yeah, definitely.
Rampager plus an Extort trigger.
I think he drew Falcon Wrath Aristocrat too.
Yep. So we'll see if Andrew has some sort of answer to this Rampager.
You had another Mizzium Mortar. I think he's going to obviously just normal cast here, get in for 6 more, put him at 3, and luckily James is going to be able to play his Aristocrat and siphon the life off in order to survive the swing back here. Because without that, it would be game over.
Yep. So Blind Obedience doing a reasonable amount of work here. He's gained some life and pinned down a lot of haste creatures.
It's definitely come down to Mizzing Mortars, it looks like. Clearly the card that's put this into Andrew's corner this game. And if Andrew draws anything, it will be game over, but it's a land, so we get to keep playing Magic cards here.
All right, a lot of draws here for James.
All right, so we are 1 to 11. However, James can draw out of this with any decent creature. I think a Varel will be very nice, right? To get this.
Yeah, Varels will be incredible.
Scavenging Ooze will be nice. Oh, and he drew a
Rampager and Extort Trigger.
Not bad at all.
Blind Obedience still doing some work here.
Yeah, let's go see what he gets. This is good old-fashioned, I think that's a haste creature. Nope, it's a 1-drop. Okay.
It's an Arbor Elf.
All right, James is back to drawing. It's kind of exciting, right? Back and forth. Let's see who can top deck
James
body.
with a ton of huge draws himself here.
Yeah.
Has his Bonfires potentially in his deck. A lot of powerful 4-mana creatures.
And you know what the best part is? You can safely tap out for Bonfire and attack them because your Blind Obedience ensures that you're not going to die to a hasted creature.
He has a lot of...
Oh, wow.
Keswick Wolfrun is also not shabby here.
It's not too bad, but again, he can't attack because he's at such a low life total. How much damage is that? That would be 8. It's not enough.
There's a Mortars off the top for Andrew.
Oh, now we'll do it. We're going to be going.
And there's
that's the match. Yep. That's it. So it's fun to watch. Obviously, at that point, it's who draws better off the top. I would rather be at 10 life than 2, obviously, which gives me I can draw a little bit worse than you as long as I draw something. Mortars there, a Rampage would have won, a Domri would have won for Andrew. So even though James put on a good show, he was really in the doghouse being at such a low life.
Yeah. Well, his initial start there was just a little cumbersome. Didn't have lands coming to play untapped, and so the pace of the game from his side was such that Andrew was able to develop his board, get in some shots, and then overloaded Mortars when James was super exposed to it. If James had more lands that came into play untapped, he might have been able to force Andrew to trade, to be able to block more often, set up the board in such a way that that Mortars wasn't as devastating as it was. But because James got off to such a slow start there, the Mortars was devastating.
It's really